Here is what I want to explore in this episode. How far away are you from the breaking point? How far away are you from that moment that breaks you? That moment that calls you into action to say, I have had it. I'm not taking this anymore. How close are you to the breaking point? The last straw that broke the camel's back. Now, how far away are you from that last straw? Do not mistake this. People are this close to getting to that point. People are this close to getting broken. We are living in a very, very stressful world. People are so stressed. People are under so much pain, and they have very little way to let it out. People don't know how to channel their internal pains out appropriately, and usually when they come out in a very, very explosive ways, and they lose the relationship, they lose people, sometimes they even lose themselves. They lose their innocence and they lose their goodness, because people don't know how to let out what has been stressing them in for a very long time. Now, here's the danger. Many people in our societies are yet close to getting to that breaking point where they say, I can't take this anymore. And if you are that person who put those people in that circumstances, you don't want to be around when they actually find themselves at that breaking point. Because when you put a person at a place where he must save himself from you, he becomes the most dangerous person to you. Now, the question is, how close are you as an individual to getting to the breaking point? And as a community, how close are we to getting to that breaking point when the community shatters and the center doesn't hold anymore and everyone is for himself? How close are we to that breaking point? Now, this is what I want to explore in this episode. Let's do this. Hi, salam alaikum. You are about to listen to Human Bound Podcast. This is the voice of your brother, Ali Hambal. Why don't we cast our minds back to one of the darkest moments in human history? The most evil institution that humans have ever devised and actually used against themselves for so many years. I'm talking about the slavery and slave trade, and specifically the Atlantic slave trade, which was the recent one until it was abolished. Now, we read a lot about slavery and slave trade. We read about its atrocities, the dark side of it. For a long time, we have this idea about how dark it was. Now, if you really want to zoom in to look into the details of the individual stories of these slavery and slaves, then you appreciate on the one side how painful it was and how dark it was, especially if you try to relate yourself to those slaves. You would straight away understand that this was some very, very bad situation. Now, stories of different slaves has been told, and today I just want you to think about the story of this one slave who actually rose to become one of the most prominent statesmen in the United States of America. And I'm talking about Fredrick Doughlas. If you have not read anything about Fredrick Doughlas, I suggest you do. The man has written 3 autobiographies of himself, going down to the details of what it meant to be a slave under the slave owners during the period where slave trade was at its peak. Now, Fredrick Doughlas had the narrative of the life of Fredrick Doughlas, and he's got this book he wrote, My Bondage, My Freedom. Now, in these books, he gave vivid details about the conditions of the slaves and their psychology and how they actually fared under that institution. Now, I would suggest you check him out, read about him a little, read about his life, dive into his mind, and that guy was quite eloquent. He moves you with his words because he lived the words. Now, Fredrick Doughlas was one slave they called slave for life. Slave for life simply means there is no way you could ever be free. He came into the world as a slave because he was a slave for life. And whenever a slave gave birth, then you as a child, you are so unfortunate to be born as a slave. You just carry on the family legacy of being a slave. He was a slave for life and he was born into this slavery. He toiled, he dreaded his awful lot. He has been into this for a very long time. When he gives you the accounts of some of the slaves, you would really get moved. It will be as though you are living in the 1820s. You would really have to sometimes even shed tears, and your heart would melt when you read about these stories of the slaves and the way he narrates them. Now, Fredrick Doughlas was supposed to be a slave for life, but alas, he got his freedom. He escaped from slavery, rose into prominence, became one of the leading figures in the abolitionist movement, the movement that is seeking to abolish slavery. He even became a presidential advisor. Wow, what a change, what a change. But how did he get into this level? How was he able to escape slavery, become so educated, and rise up to be this prominent figure? Now, here is what happened. Now, he was moved into the house of a master. His wife was Sophia. She was that first lady who introduced him to reading. She tried to teach him the alphabet. Now, once he started to learn this, his master, the husband of Sophia, he told her it is evil to teach slaves how to read and how to write. Because you see, when you teach the slave and he becomes knowledgeable, he would begin to feel pain for being a slave. He would only think about the freedom he might not ever get, which would add to his painful lot. So, teaching a slave to read, giving him knowledge, is like you punishing him. And he would not become a submissive, he would not become a good slave if he learns. So, the master directed the wife never to teach Fredrick anything. Now, Fredrick picked this up and he realized that the one thing that could liberate a person is actually knowledge. So from that day, he gave in to seeking knowledge, to understanding, to knowing. And that was his first step towards freedom. And ever since, he began to read a lot. He began to learn from different ways. And with time, he actually started not to feel like comfortable being a slave anymore. Something began to change in him. You know how it happens when you are living your life, you are living in a very bad shape, but then you kind of convinced yourself that I'm just going to be like this for my entire life. And then you convinced yourself that, okay, there is no way out, so what can I do? I will just have to employ some coping mechanisms. And it's sad that many people are living in a very bad shape, but they are just managing. They have employed some kind of a coping mechanism, the coping mechanism that would make them feel like, okay, it's okay to live under this bad situation. Now, many people are not happy. Many people are actually miserable. It may be in any relationship. It may be in a marriage, toxic relationship, toxic environment, toxic community. But then they would kind of say, well, there is no way out of this. So why don't I just employ some coping mechanism? Many people are living under coping mechanism. They are just living, they are just coping, because they would have to convince themselves somehow that this is my destiny. And once a person is able to convince himself psychologically, even though he might have stress in his heart, but psychologically, he would think, I am okay with this. Now, what happens is when something really strong comes along and convinces you that there is a way out, this is not the way you are supposed to live, many people from that day would start to hate their situation and they would start to look for freedom. Now, this is exactly what happened to Fredrick Doughlas when Sophia started teaching him the alphabet, and then he realized that this is the way life is supposed to be. Freedom is supposed to be for everyone. Now, he begins to learn. So he started becoming a little bit insubordinate to his master. Now here is where I'm trying to take you with this story. Now his master said he would have to make Fredrick kind of a good slave. How do you make a good slave? When your slave is not insubordinate, when your slave is not responding to the way you want him to respond. Now they have somebody around. His name was Covey. Now, Covey is known for his skill of breaking slaves. He was so notorious, known for that he actually earned the name slave breaker. Now, Fredrick Doughlas was taken to Covey. Covey was a poor man and a farmer. The way he actually gets slaves to work for him and then live his life was through this reputation of breaking slaves, so that those slaves will be given to him for breaking them, break them for their master, and then in the process they would serve you. Fredrick Doughlas was taken to Covey, and Covey actually did his magic. Oh, you should listen to Fredrick Doughlas when he actually narrates this story. He broke Doughlas. Finally, he broke him. But then, somewhere along the line, he did something. Even though he broke Doughlas, made him submissive, he pushed him too far. He pushed Doughlas too far because he assigned him to a work, and when Doughlas couldn't do it and he was injured near death, even at that circumstances, Covey wanted to do more harm to Doughlas. Doughlas had to run to his master, filed a complaint that Covey was doing this, but the master never supported the slave, and he sent Doughlas back to the house of Covey. He had to spend some couple of days on his way back to the house of Covey. When he came down to Covey in the morning, that was where this happened. Now, what happened? In the morning, Covey tried to punish Doughlas. Wow. Doughlas was now, no, this is it. I can't take this anymore. And when Covey tried to strike him, Doughlas did not just sit down. He struck back. He held Covey, and it was a serious fight between the two of them. And it was like 2 hours of fight between the master, Covey, the slave breaker, and Fredrick Doughlas, who had enough of this torture. He decided he can be a slave, but he would not be the miserable slave. He can't be treated like that anymore. So he fought him, and they fought for a very long time because he had had enough. Nothing mattered anymore because he knew when as a slave you fought your master, you are facing a death sentence because you could be killed just like that, like nothing. But then sometimes when the last straw broke the camel's back, people just don't think about consequences. I don't know if you have noticed this, but sometimes when you had enough and you snap and you finally feel like, I can't take this anymore, in most cases, consequences do not come to mind. You usually don't think about consequences. Usually we don't think about what happens after this. No, we don't think because it happens in just like that. It happens so fast and you just respond. You just respond. It's not rational. It's something that has been in there for a very long time, and now it's time to just let it out. And when it explodes like that, reason would not be found anywhere. The action would be spontaneous and you would not care about consequences. Now, that is what happens when people had it. Now, when Fredrick Doughlas had it, he knew he was a slave and he was very much fighting a master, and the consequence of which would be death. Now, he didn't think about all those consequences because he had enough. And they fought. And after that, he won the fight. What happened after that? Covey would have to think about his reputation. Because if the rest of the slaves and the community of slave owners now come to know that his reputation of breaking slaves is shattered. Because when the slaves come to know that, as slaves, you can fight Covey now. Because Fredrick has fought Covey. Covey is nobody. He would lose respect among the slaves, and his ability to break them would shatter. And now you would have to think about the masters. If they come to know that now I can't break slaves anymore, the masters would not give me slaves anymore. Now this is just one slave who's gone too far. Why don't I just let this slide and then move on with my life? Now that was what saved Fredrick Doughlas. And ever since that day, he was not subjected to that miserable lot any longer. Now, the reason why I'm trying to talk about Fredrick Doughlas is because, you see, his situation was so extreme. And think about the possible consequences. It would be death. He would really have been killed, and it would not matter. But you see, because he has gotten to that point where he has had enough. Now, the question I am trying to explore here is, how far away are you from getting to that breaking point where consequences don't matter, where consequences don't matter anymore, where you don't think about what follows after your action? You just want to get out of this. You just want to let out whatever you've been feeling for a very long time because you have had enough. You've had it. Now, recently, this movie has been released, and that was The Straw. Now, we all have seen Straw. Wow, Straw is such an emotional movie, isn't it? It's a very, very emotional movie. Now, when you watch Straw, did you ever think about that statement, the last straw that broke the camel's back? Yes, it might have been that situation where the lady actually reached that last straw where she got broken and she can't take it anymore. She can't take it anymore. It was so emotional. Many people were able to relate to her, not for anything, but because many people are in her same situation. Because many people are going through a lot. They have been burying a lot in their heart, and they don't even know how to let out. So that when they see that movie, they quickly and easily relate to that, because people are really close to getting to that point. I would suggest this book to you if you want to read. It's called When the Body Says No, written by Gabor Mate. Now, what he tried to do in that book is to actually explain and establish some relationship between the internal stress people go through and some deadly diseases and ailments, including cancer and some mental diseases that are fatal. He tried to put some relationship between life stress and disease. You see, he actually explains that when people go under a lot of stress for a very long time, now some of them may come even from a childhood, and most of them may even come from our daily relationship, our relationship with people. Now, you are living with a very toxic person, a person who doesn't care about you, and you are a very nice person. Sometimes you are the one that carries the load of the entire family, and you are the person who actually do everything to make the relationship work. I don't know if you have ever thought about this, like this is a relationship, but then there is some kind of an imbalance in that relationship. It was always only one person, and that would be you, who is actually doing everything to make the relationship works. All right. You would sacrifice your happiness to make sure that relationship works. You would sacrifice your life sometimes to make sure that relationship works. Now, those are the people who are at the risk of having these kind of stress diseases, ailments. Now, I'm not saying it. This is a statement, or at least it is a study that Mate Gabor is trying to establish in his book, when the body says no. Now, I would advise you to go check that book out, to read that book, read the stories of the victims who were his patients that he wrote and narrated in that book, and tell me that we don't have those same situation in our societies. Now, there is one fascinating thing about what he's trying to establish is the fact that the nice people would be the people under the most danger. Because the nice people are not confrontational. They are not. And if you are in a relationship with a very nice person, you would know that he would swallow everything just to put a smiley face, because he would believe that that smiling face would make things much better. They would endure a lot. And they are in this imbalanced relationship. And they are the only people carrying the survival kit of that relationship. And what is the other guy doing anyway? Okay? It is his responsibility to just be in the relationship, and you would be the one carrying the survival kit of that relationship. You are killing that person. Now, sometimes you meet a person full of smiles, an innocent person, very joyful person, but because you put this whole burden of relationship on his head. And nice people always try to carry the burden of any relationship, because they would actually automatically assume the position of the caretakers of that relationship. This is the reason why the nice people are always the target of toxicity in any given relationship, because they would be the people who take it. Now, I'm not saying be confrontational at every stage, but any relationship that has only one person carrying the survival of that relationship is one relationship that seeks its survival by sacrificing one person's health and even sometimes life, because at the end of the day, they would end up suffering much. Now, as individuals, we would need to understand that the stresses that we put ourselves into might actually cause some of the most deadly situations in our lives. Now, I always say this: when you put a person at a place where he must save himself from you, you had better not be around when he finally says, I can't take this anymore. Because you know what? He becomes the most dangerous person to you, because you put him in that position. The nice people would take it until they can't take it anymore. And when they can't take it anymore, they become the most dangerous people. I think this is the way God made us, right? We take things, we digest them, and then we take them out. You see, biologically, that is the way it is supposed to be, so that the cycle of the world would keep moving, so that it just keeps going on and on and on. What goes in would have to digest, and then the bad stuff would just have to come out somehow. You see, God did not design it this way just for us to violate it. Any toxicity that stays in the system actually corrupts the system, and it causes all sorts of ailment. Now, we know this. Biologically, we know this. When you consume bad stuff, or when you consume anything, the body digests the good stuff and they keep you healthy, and the bad stuff will just come out. I believe the same way with emotional intake and the psychological intake. Problem is processing. When we can't process emotion, they stay in us and they would actually degenerate into some kind of diseases that Mato Gabor was trying to explore and talk about in this book, When the Body Says No. Because you see, we, especially our communities is a community that has like a lot of people with unprocessed bad feelings. I mean, we just don't process it. Now, sometimes you have to ask, when you look at communities mu, me yasa ne mutane suke da yawan hushi? Me yasa communities mu, zongo communities mu kake kaga mutane na da yawan hushi? Muna karanta alkur'ani na ce muna ala bi zikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Wannan gaskiya ne, Allah bai yi karya ba. Amma idan ka samu mai karanta Qur'ani kullun ya tashi bayan asuba ya sha kunu, ya yi hushi, ya damu, dan zango kullun ya damu, ya yi hushi shi kullum. ya ja aya ala bi zikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Allah yayi gaskiya. To me yasa huskanka, me yasa kullun ka damu bayan cewa bi zikrillahi ne ya kamata ka samu kwanciyar zuciya? But the fact is we are so angry. We are angry people. Do not get it twisted. Anger is not you like frowning all the time. Some of the smiley faces are the most angry ones. I just want you to follow me here. I'm trying to talk about my community. Very long time ago, da nake na taba hawan mota. On that stretch, Sawaba, Ababu, mota trotro, akwai wani driver, ko wani driver trotro. Always ya frustrate. Because I used to stay at Sawaba, right? And in ka fita ka je a gari ka dawo, ka shiga Sawaba, ka shiga trotro, gabanin a samu a daidaita ya zamto abin da ya zamto. But this driver, of course, you would notice, you would know the drivers on the route. And this guy, he was always an angry man. This driver was always angry. He was always annoyed, and he was always pissed about something. Excuse my language, but that was him. He's always fighting with his passengers. Kullum yana fada da passengers ne, wannan driver. I came to know him as just an angry man. And, you know, in most cases, in his car, he plays the Quran, Qira'a. Yana sa Qira'a cikin Qur'ani, cikin motan shi. Always, in bai sa Qira'a ciki ba ya sa wazi cikin motan shi. But every time he is angry, every time he is frustrated. Why? One time I had a situation with him. I gave him money and he was supposed to give me change. But then he didn't. I kept pestering him. Bani change na, bani change na. Yace sama hakuri mana, inda kai na abin nan. Bani change na. It's my change. Mutumin nan ya explode da hushi. Ya so mazagin ka, ya so mazagin ka, ya so mazagin ka, yana cin mutuncin ka. What? Just ka bani change na. That was a long time ago. I was really angry. I was, why would you do that? And then when I got to where I was supposed to alight, drop from the car, I just went down. I was sitting just beside him in the front. Gaban trotro, then I saw kind of slam the trotro. Wow! You don't want to slam the door of trotro driver. You don't know how much life that car has in it. So don't slam the door of trotro. If you slam the door of trotro, you are calling for trouble. And I did exactly that. I was so furious. I stepped down, slammed the door. Wow. This driver parked his car, came down, gave me one good slap on my face. It was like a flash. Bam! On my face. Was like, what? And then before I could even navigate my senses out of the flash that went through, radiated through my eyes, and before I even started to see any natural light, many people came around and yes, it is done. Wow. He was an angry man. He is not alone, I think. Many of my Zongo people are angry. I mean, he is frustrated. He vents it out all the time. But zangonnin mu mutane sun yi hushi, mutane sun frustrate. Akwai frustration a cikin zukatan mutanen mu. Why is that? I think it's because we don't have any means to digest them and take them out appropriately. You know, in ka ci abinci, system ɗinka ya digest abincin. In zai fita, as a gentleman, what do? Ka je toilet. Okay? You find yourself a toilet facility. You go and you do your business. Whether number one or number two, you do it. Like a gentleman. You come out as if nothing has ever happened. Because you have digested and you have taken it out the right way. Now, there used to be a time where we didn't have public toilets in our community. So we go to the bush. Yeah, we went to the bush. And you do your business. You come out to the civilization and nobody knew what you did because you actually took it out somewhere that is not harmful to people. Now, if you digest your food and you want to take out the excess, the appropriate way to do it is to take it out where it would not be harmful to people. Go to the toilet. Do it there. It won't harm nobody's nose, okay? It will not damage anybody's day because some people have very bad stomach, all right? So go and do it there. That's what you do as a normal person. What happens then when you digest food and you try to take it out and you decided, I don't have time. Why don't I just do it right here in this conference room? Why don't I just do it right here in the bedroom? And you are sleeping with your wife and your wife says, I want to release some gas. Why don't I just do it now? And, and then, stuff like that. You would destroy things. It's not appropriate. So the best thing to do is to take it out appropriately. The problem is, I think, Zongwanamu, we have a lot of things, but we don't emotionally, a lot of stress, a lot of frustration, a lot of pain inside the hearts of many of my people, a lot of anger. Many people are angry for so many things, a lot of trauma in my community, a lot of toxicity, emotional toxicity, psychological toxicity, but we don't have facilities to take them out. And if you don't have facilities to take these out, now, how do you take them out? They then translate into the rude behavior, the spontaneous explosion that we find in our some communities today. I think, I'm not a psychologist, but I think by way of natural, release of excesses, if anything gets in and doesn't have a way to go out, I believe it always finds a way to come out in a way that would explode and cause mayhem. You see, this is what I think. In my communities, Zongo communities, one time I was having this conversation on my group chat. Okay, that was a while ago. And I actually say something in relation to people talking about their problems, find someone or find somehow to let things out. And almost everybody is not in support with me. Everybody doesn't think you should talk about anything. Just take it. You can do it. We think it is some kind of a big man stuff to bury our pain. You may bury it for too long, and many people die, and we don't know why. And you say, he was this close to the breaking point, and we don't know it. Our community is so oblivious. Is that a good language? I don't know, but we are simply at the dark side of this knowledge. We don't know what's wrong with you, and to be fair, we don't care. A few weeks ago, I read this post about, a few weeks ago, a brother made a post on Facebook, Imam Hassan Toir, yeah. He said, look, if you have a relative in abroad, I said, Zongo man Canada boga, wanuri, and she boga yeso mache maka, man, I want to come home. This is too much for me. Do not encourage him to stay there, because the next thing you would hear is either his death or some serious sickness, because the struggle and the stress is real. It's real. I don't know. I mean, before we were told all about the romantic side of this hustling thing, that hustling is so romantic. But then now we know that there is some real stuff to it. It's a stress. But what happens in our community is that we don't have anyone to speak to, because whenever we try to speak to someone, he first either judges us or he accuses us of being like coward or something like that. But the judgmental tone and shaming people is are two things that are leading causes of so much stress and internalization of our pain, which in turn causes a lot of toxicity in our system and bitterness and hatred and all this internal anger. I think shaming people and actually judging them are the two things that demotivate the chunk people in my community never to open their mouth about anything that is disturbing them. Because when you speak to one person, it is as though you are speaking through Husky radio, that everybody is going to listen to what you are saying. You are just speaking to the whole Zongo people because you spoke to just one person. That is how bad our situation has become, and that is how worse we are faring to each other. You see, there is one thing, kamar misali, relationship, okay? Aure. Okay, Allah ya ba mu dama mu yi aure biyu, maza. Mu yi aure masna, wasula, sawaruba. Alright, Allah ne ya ba mu dama. Aha, mazaje idan kun tashi yin aure, masna, wasulasa, waruba. Ka yi aure za ka iya ka auri ɗaya, za ka iya ka auri mata biyu, za ka iya ka auri mata uku, za ka iya ma ka auri mata hudu idan Allah ya baka dama. Kuma ka iya ka bi ka'idodin yin aure na biyun da ukun da hudun. Amma this is the thing. I have been thinking about this for a very long time. Idan ka samu mata na farko, na biyun kishiya za ka yi mata. Okay. The question is, kishiya shin tana da dadi idan an yi wa mutum ko ba ta da dadi? Of course ba ta da dadi. But what should you do? Nah, Allah ne ya ce a yi. So of course we accept it. We accept it. We are not against Allah ya ce a yi ko Allah ya ce bai ce ka a yi ba. Okay? It is what Allah says. A yi kishiya idan kana da iko ka iya ka bi ka'idodi. Now we have one man wanda ya iya bi kan ka'idodi ya yi ma matarsa kishiya. Now here is what I have. The problem I have is not with what God says. You can't have problem with what God said. Subhanallah. But I have problem with the behavior of some of the men. What behavior am I talking about? Kagan za ka yi ma yarinya kishiya, okay? Za ka yi da matanka kishiya. Now this was a woman you have fallen in love with, you have spent some time with, and naturally she is attached to you, kun so juna. And yanzu za ka kawo watan da kamar ka yi ma zuciyarta blow, ya mata ciwo. She would require enormous amount of energy to endure that and to be patient. Now, me saura gare ka, I think you would be a good contributor to making things easy for her. Because even Allah says, yuridullahu bikumul yusra wala yuridu bikumul usra. Ban san tafsirin ba, amma larabcin dai mun yi mu fahimci cewa generally Allah na son mu mutun sauki ne, ba yana son masa zafin lamari ba. Sai sa duk lokacin da Allah ya bar kai wani abu mai zafi, I think Allah is a very good strategist. So he would want you to find a better strategy to make that development easy for your wife. But many people would go like, wallahi yariyan ga wawiya ne ba ta san Allah ya ce ayi aure biyun nan ba. Ta yi akuri kawai a huta. I'm like, this is the behavior of some of the men. I don't think you are making it easy for her, my man. I think even though ka yi mata kishiya, Allah ya ce kai, kana da ikon kai, za ka yi adalci da sauransu. Idan ta soma jin abin na mata zafi, I think you should actually be compassionate and understand her pain. How about you understanding the pain of your wife because you are doing something painful? And instead of you being a contributor to more pain, you might as well say, why don't I help her in these difficult times? I am not saying Babu Wande Kei. I know many people who do it. But if we have too much people actually whacking the wives on the head for adding some more wives to her, and then by essence trying to punish her for being jealous of a person she loves so much, I think we are not employing the strategy that the Prophet might have suggested us to employ as Muslims, as husbands who have this responsibility of taking care of the emotions of our wives. This is just something that I'm thinking about. Now, if you say, kai dai ka jira har dai idan kai aure biyu ka fahimci, well, let's get there. But before we get there, I think the Prophet wouldn't do this. So usually, I think we would have to ask ourselves in this situation, what did the Prophet do? Now, did he insult them for being jealous, for having him add more wives to them. Now, what happens is most of these wives, they get this into their system emotionally. And then what do? Exactly. They employ this coping mechanism so that the husband is not like a full husband anymore. He is someone she's just coping with. And then you would be like, yanzu komi ya daidaita. No, she's just coping with you. She's just coping with you. So that the whole Zongo, many people in Zongo have just employed some coping mechanisms to live with. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that you never know when a person gets to that point when he's actually broken, when he's close to breaking. And usually when people break, they break bad. Have you seen the movie Breaking Bad? Yes. Now, it is one movie that they have managed to make it boringly exciting. It was a boring movie, yet it is so captivating and so much exciting. You see, you know Walter White. He was just a chemist. He was a school teacher. Very brilliant scientist. But he broke bad. He had this family. He had this wife. And the wife was a little bit controlling in his life. He was that reserved person. He was that person who was just always there for the families, trying to do his best, but his best wasn't enough. He was that person who always gets disrespected from time to time. But then he had it at some point. He had it at some point because he had this sickness. He had this cancer. And then he had this family finances like going haywire, like breaking like hell. And he was, no, I can't do this anymore. He broke. That broke him, especially the sickness and the thought of his family thinking about him after his death, that he was a man who amounted to nothing. Now, you see, every man wants to be something. Let me just take this opportunity to say to my ladies, look, if you really want your man, never disrespect him. Never let him feel like he is nothing. Any man who responds to the name man would dread and hate feeling nothing, like feeling like he was nothing. Every man wants to be somebody. That is just the way we are wired. That's just the way Allah made us. Now, Walter White was like, how am I going to leave my family? My child is not like a very capable young boy. He has his disabilities. And now I am sick. And now I'm having this new kid. And now I'm going to die any moment. What would happen to them? This broke him. And when Walter White broke, he didn't break to become some Superman. He broke bad. He broke bad. He became a bad man. He became the top-notch guy in the drug trafficking industry. He was the one who instilled fear in the heart of men. And when there was some killing, he would be the one at the top of the chain because he became that man. What I'm trying to say is, when a person breaks, usually he breaks bad. When a person holds in a lot of stress and sadness and misery and a lot of disrespect and maltreatment in his life, there comes a time when a person says, I can't take this anymore. It breaks him. And when a person gets broken, he breaks bad. And sometimes that's just the way he's gone. You can't find him anymore. He's gone. And he would have a lot of experience to tell him that he has to break bad, because when he was good, he suffered for it. And now he would understand that being good only brings you suffering. So he will just break bad, and at least, even though life is not really good, but now nobody dare to repeat those things to him anymore. Now he has developed some defense mechanism. And usually when people break bad, they now become the chief instigators. And they will be the ones calling the shots, inflicting the pain. And they will be the ones, and they would become the narcissistic ones. And they would become the vengeful ones. And they will become the heartless ones. Usually when people break bad, they become worse than the people who made them break bad. You don't want to be close to a person who broke bad. Now, the question I'm trying to ask is, how close are you to getting to that point where you can't handle it and you are breaking? Now, this is just me trying to say, maybe check your heart, check in with your heart, check in with your life, check in with the people around you. I mean, assess your life so far. How has it been? How has it been so far? Now, if you do that, perhaps you would come to appreciate that, no, I might need to take a different course of action. I might do something urgent before this breaks me. Because when it does break you, it will not be good for anyone. Perhaps it's time to start checking. It's time to start looking. Read about books, man. Read about things that speaks about your heart. Take your mind away from the world politics and the rat race and all those tension and pressure. It might serve you well. You might come back to your senses and you might try to do you. You might try to take care of you more than you have been doing all your life. First, it is to your benefit, and it would be to the benefit of anyone who comes in contact with you. Now, this is just my way of thinking. Okay, may Allah be with you. Until next episode. Assalamu alaikum.